we're going to get started. I have a few notes before we dive into conversation. So before we get going, I'd love to share a few event guidelines. All right. So first of all, just note that this event will be recorded and you as a participant won't appear in the video. And we also muted everyone just to make sure that we can hear our amazing speakers that we have today with us. That being said, we do want to hear from you, and especially we do want to hear about the question that you have for them. So please use the feature at the bottom of your screen that you can see, the Q&A feature, to drop any questions that you have along the way during the conversation. We will have some time at the end of the event fully dedicated to answering your questions. We also have closed captioning available, so to turning on, you can click on the live transcription icon at the bottom of your screen and select your preference. Also want to go quickly over the agenda today. So we're going to have a round of intros so that you can meet our three panelists. We're going to dive into our discussion. And as I mentioned, we should have about 50 minutes at the end of today's event to go over your questions. And as a first introduction, I'll introduce myself. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much to be with us today. My name is Marie Gauthier, and I'm the head of customer success team at Meetup. So today we are joined by leaders from WordPress and Google. And so we have Aniedi from Google, Isotta and Julia from WordPress, and we're going to hear from them how to drive more activity within your community, even if it's been a while. And hopefully you're going to learn, new tips, most successful events to host, for example, when you're coming back from a hiatus, and get a feel for the tools you can use to contact members when you're ready to get back out there. So before we get going with the conversation, I'd love to have each of the panelists share a little bit about themselves. And we'll start with Aniedi.
Thanks, Marilu. Hi, everyone. My name is Aniedi. I currently work as a program manager on the Google Developer Ecosystem team. I lead our community efforts for a program we call the Google Developer Groups and Google Developer Experts across North America. Prior to about 3 months ago, I also led these programs across Sub-Saharan Africa, where I had been working for Google for approximately 6 years. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I'm based in Sunnyvale, California right now, and happy to share what I know about our communities and getting back together again.
Awesome, thank you. And I'm going to transition to Isotta.
Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot, Marilu, for inviting me and us. For everyone else, hi, I'm Isotta. I'm usually based in Barcelona, in Spain, but today I'm visiting my parents in Italy, so in Savona, and it's super cold, as you can see. And I am here today because since January 2022, I've been sponsored by a company called Automatic to contribute full-time to the WordPress open source project. And I focus on supporting the programs and event of the community team. So I work very close with meetup organizers like you all, and what I love the best is connect to people from different culture and learn from their experience. So this opportunity, I think it's going to be great for share tips and learn from each other.
Wonderful. Thank you for the intro. And then finally, Julia.
Hello, my name is Julia Golomb, and like Isotta, I'm sponsored by Automatic to work full-time on the WordPress open source project in the events programs, like Isotta. So we're working on organizing, supporting organizers in creating successful meetups and WordCamps, which are events, conferences around the world. And some of the values of open source include collaboration, transparency, inclusivity, and community. And these values are really important to our Meetup program as well. So we'll talk more about that as we go. And I split my time between New Hampshire and Northern California. So I am bi-coastal.
Amazing, love that. So again, thank you so much for you three to be with us today. And let's dive right in with our first question. And I want to give some context, to people who join us today for today's conversation. So as you mentioned, you both, the Google Developer Group and the WordPress communities, you have a large global, network of local groups. And so you saw a number of groups, unfortunately, being affected by the pandemic at a really large scale and a global level. And so as a response, your both teams decided to invest more resources to help local groups resume their activities in the past year. So that's why we invited you today, because we know that you got a lot of learnings from working with local groups looking to reactivate their groups. So before we really dive into different questions, my first question for you is, can you share a little bit more about the specific reactivation initiatives and projects that you've rolled out in 2022?
I can go.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yes, for the WordPress community, team, which I'm part of with a lot of other contributors, the reactivation of Meetup groups was our main focus in 2022, because as you said, it was pandemic hit everyone. So many meetups, of about 700 meetups that were active before pandemic, more than 400 became inactive. And so it was a lot, many people involved. So we were able to launch at the beginning of summer the Meetup Reactivation project, seeking for the help of other organizers around the world to build basically teams of supporters who can reach out and help organizers around the world to start again organizing in-person or online meetups where all the places where it wasn't a chance to come back to in-person events. Yeah, so we were lucky enough to have a lot of supporters joining from the community. We were able to build a few teams so we could work on different regions and support Asia, or people based in Asia and Oceania, Europe, Latin America, Africa, and US and Canada. And it's still a work in progress. We are expecting to keep working and focusing on it on the entire 2023 until the end of the year, at least. But the great news is that bringing people together seems to work, because so far we've had 40 people actively supporting the project, and now we've been able to reactivate almost 1/3 of all the groups that were inactive, groups that hadn't had any events at least since November 2021. So this is the journey of the project so far.
And that's incredible. Really great to see the result that you were able to drive with that project so far. Aniedi, what about you on the Google side? Can you share a bit more about what the reactivation efforts look like in the past year?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, we do have quite a number of groups all across the world. And then we do have regional teams that sort of take care of these groups. So one of the things we did in North America was to try and, first of all, connect with each of these organizers or these organizing teams, especially in their own cities. So we did have the privilege of being able to go around organized a few dinners where we actually had members of our team go meet these organizers in a very relaxed setting in their own place. I mean, generally our groups put together technical events which have to do with, planning sessions, looking for technical speakers, sourcing for a venue. But we decided that to connect with them and show that we really cared about these groups, we would meet with them in a very relaxed setting. So it's very much like a dinner. We opened up even those dinners and conversations to people that were not just our group members. So we wanted to help these group members connect with other organizers and other community groups, leaders outside of the Google Developer Groups setting. So the goal there was just to create a very relaxed and communal atmosphere to discuss and then to listen. So a lot of feedback was necessary. People had started meeting online fatigue had set in. So in terms of attendance, in terms of like how well these groups were doing, in terms of like the organizer motivation, we needed to sort of find out firsthand different reasons why either people were getting together, why they were reluctant to put up the next event, or if there were specific blockers that we could help them, remove. Could it be the fact that venues were difficult nowadays? Could it be the fact that a lot of people had switched to remote work? So the concept of when you want to put an event together, maybe it's late evening after work, people after their jobs, they're already downtown, they would just come downstairs, they go to a nearby location, sit out traffic, and then they would attend an event just to do that. That scenario was not exactly the same across different cities, across different towns, across different countries. So we needed a little bit of fact finding to actually just connect with the organizers. So I feel those dinners were very helpful. We got a lot of feedback, we took a lot of notes, and it also created a sort of a sense of belonging for us and the organizers, for us to connect. And this had been like almost after 18 to 24 months of not being together in the same space. So I feel the dinners we did, I mean, it was a privilege, and we also had the fact that we have many organizers. So we had sort of dinner roadshow. It was very useful to just connecting with the organizers and then hearing from them what their next event or next move or next group or next challenge look like, so we could find a way to unblock them.
I love that. It's such a good human first approach, right? To take to really have those really important discussions with the organizers, to get this valuable feedback before understanding how you can truly help them. And so for everyone listening, during the conversation, we're going to first talk about, look at the perspective of how can, if you are, yourself responsible for a large community where you have a lot of local leaders, or if you're community manager, similar like our panelists. So we're gonna cover some strategies that you can put in place. And the second part of the conversation, we're going to get more into specific tips that local leaders themselves can, use to better connect with members and reactivate the activity coming from members. So, again, like we mentioned, you have a lot of experience, the three of you, working with various people around the world who run meetup groups. And so what my first question I have for you is, what tactics have you used to motivate and encourage organizers to resume hosting events regularly? And we can start with you, Julia.
Yeah. So going back to this concept of finding out what organizers need in order to reactivate and successfully host events, that was our first step. And one of the things that we heard from a lot of organizers is that in this sort of new world after COVID and still during COVID, it's really hard for many organizers to find a good meeting space, a good venue for their meetup groups. And so having heard this repeatedly from a lot of different meetup organizers, we started offering venue support funds. And so meetup organizers can actually request money from WordCamp Central to cover their venue fees, because we don't want lack of a meeting space to be a barrier to reactivate meetups around the world. And I'm going to actually drop a link in the chat. In addition to the venues, I'll drop this link in the chat when I'm done talking, but in addition to offering venue support funds, we also offer other suggestions for organizers to find free or low cost meeting spaces. And we have those resources available in the Meetup Organizer Handbook that includes asking the Meetup group members whether they have any connections to local spaces or ideas for places to meet. And we also provide templates for the organizers to reach out to local potentially sponsors who might donate a space, a co-working space, for example. So that's one of the tactics that we've used to motivate and encourage organizers to resume hosting regular events. And then we also have a really valuable resource called the Meetup Organizer Handbook. And I will drop that link in the chat as well. That's for organizers of WordPress meetups. And in addition to having info about how to find venues, it also includes ideas for programming different types of events that organizers might host.
I love that. So again, kind of really going, first having a conversation with organizers to identify barriers, and then, depending on the resources that you can provide, really thinking through like what can I, as the organization supporting local leaders, can I, potentially offer them to remove those barriers. Isotta, I think if you want to share next, you have another really good tactic to share.
Yes, thanks. Yes, I of course I agree with everything that Julia shared. And another point that I want to raise is that on top of practical support and assistance, something that we saw that it doesn't matter like the type of community where I'm sorry, the cold where the community is located and the practical problems that they're facing right now. We all experienced something similar all over the world. In the past 2 years, we disconnected. Even if we hosted online events and we were somehow connected online, I think that we all felt a huge loneliness deep inside. So another tactic that we're using and we are betting on it is to bring people together. Just for example, organizers try to let them know that they're not alone, that the community team is there, that they have a structure of people who they can count on, and starting from the very mentors that they gather they gathered together, wanted to help others reactivate their meetups, and they're now organizing calls, like group calls, group meetings, or group chats with the organizer that they're supporting, because it's a different situation if I have to face the reactivation of my community alone, rather than knowing that, okay, I'm not alone, because there are like hundreds of people doing the same and they can understand me. So we truly believe that bringing an organizer together will re-engage them, will make them feel again that they are together in this and they're not separated alone. We're trying to do the same, for example, with the supporters of the project. We have monthly meetings, like kind of, okay, let's remind ourselves that we are together in this. And this applies to any type of community. It can be a community of more than thousands of people, or a community of 10 people. If we feel alone and that we are carrying a burden alone on our shoulders, best thing that we can do is to talk to each other and share our wins and our challenges. And we've found out that we're not alone, because we are all experience similar situations. So
Like yeah. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, nothing. Just want to add that if we succeed in motivate again the organizer, they will motivate like this the rest of the group, and they will probably find other people who want to join them as co-organizers and help them reactivate and remotivate the entire community.
Yeah, I love it. Really kind of, building a community for leaders to exchange, as you said, their wins, but also their challenges, is really a great way to motivate them. And we will share later, but if you are listening right now and you feel like I don't have that many leaders, we do have an organizer community on Discord for Meetup organizers that we will share later at the end of this event. And so we invite you to join if you want to find that community of other leaders to exchange with. Now turning to Aniedi, what would be some tactic that you've seen successful when trying to motivate organizers to resume their meetings?
Well, I have to agree with a lot that sort of shared, but then also like maybe speaking directly to the organizers themselves, like many of you on this call, is I'll say it's more like advice. Like start small, moderate your expectations. You don't expect to hit the pre-pandemic numbers. Don't use those metrics to judge yourself. So let's say you have a 4,000 strong group or 1,000 people, or your Meetup events, your event used to have like 500 people. You don't have to aim for that, number or that metric immediately, right? So it's very okay to even understand and realize that some people who were part of your group before wouldn't come again, right? So I think it's more of a mindset and a paradigm shift that you're going to do this gradually, and people want to see whether these events do hold, and we think of like, okay, I probably won't go for the first one or the second one. I probably would go for the third one. So it's about you coming together. First of all, I mean, just to get the event up and running, have a very small group, or try to reach out to a very small group of people who you can confirm their attendance. Maybe these are people who are regularly supporting you or co-organizing, and motivate these folks to also share that message. So it's first of all finding this core team or core group of people who will be committed to the event, passionate about it, and then sharing it. I'm going to be attending this event. I'm going to be there. Is each one bring one, and then like sort of putting together this small core team of people that can help. The thing about sharing also is that with many of these groups, and especially groups that are within the network, they're usually a couple of people who are either more experienced or who went out on a limb and then did their first event. Sharing those experiences and hearing from people who have had either successes or had, experiences putting their first post-pandemic event together, that is usually very helpful for others who want to sort of like, jump on or go ahead and then, put their first event once again. But I really think you really need to be less, I would say, obsessed, if that's the right word to choose, about exactly how your community was before. If you concentrate on, oh, this is where we used to meet, and this is how we used to do, and this is the kind of content we used to talk about, it's not going to be the same. You really do have to realize that it's a new environment, and people's habits, and tastes have also changed. The one thing which was also very pivotal in the way we think and we communicated to some of our communities is, for instance, in technology, a lot of people embraced software, technology, digital marketing, content creation over the last 1 or 2 years. It could have been a career change. So if someone has just 1 year's experience or 18 months experience with a technology, with a platform, with a new venture, chances are they've never been to an in-person event before. So it's very likely that someone with just 1 year's experience with your platform or technology has never been to a meetup before, has never been to an in-person group before. So you have to also design for that user and realize that while there may be people who you have, in quote, lost, there are lots of fresh people coming in to your interest group or to your community who have never seen anything like this before. So don't feel too bad if you can't get your regular people or the usual people coming to your events. There are lots of new people coming into that space who your content will really, really appeal to and would love to be there.
Such good, really good insights. And I really love the setting expectations, really being realistic in your expectations, and also welcoming this change, right? Of welcoming new types of members to your group, and being mindful of that. So turning to another question now, I'd love to hear, what methods have you used to contact your group leaders, and which one have you found to be the most effective?
In our case, can I go?
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks. In our case, as we our community is spread out on basically the entire planet, we try different ways, because depending on the country and the habits, community would use more one tool or another. So we have always used the meetup.com group message to reach out to the member of the group in case where for example, new organizers were needed because the old organizer moved to another place, or their life changed, so they couldn't take care of organizing events. But also the WordPress community is also very active on Slack. So Slack was another tool that we use a lot. And then depending on the place, they might have their own Telegram chat or WhatsApp. So the official ones are the message on meetup.com, Slack, and we created a dedicated mailbox to reach out to organizers if we didn't have any chance to reach out to them through Meetup or Slack.
Awesome. Yeah. So it sounds like basically, trying different ways, and you've named like a few here, is key to finding what works best for your community. And given that especially if you have a large member base, it's possible you'll need to use multiple channels to because each member has different preferences. So most likely using a combination of channels will be the most successful. Aniedi, what have you seen to be successful within the Google Developer Groups community?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same. We have like an active, Google Space. We're active on Slack. We have a mailing list, but oftentimes the direct email works very well. Back to my previous comments, moderate your expectations. If you're sending direct emails to 20, 30, 50, or 100 people, not everyone's going to respond. Some people will just respond super active. One way to also filter that is if you have this, Slack or chat spaces, sometimes you're able to identify those who are not saying anything. Usually you have a small group of people who sometimes, for want of a better word, sort of dominate the conversation space, and they're always being very active. So you have to be a bit, you need to pay attention to details and try and figure out, who's the person who's not talking again or not responding as they used to, right? And then you sort of seek out those people and send them either a direct message on the same platform, or you send them an email. Sometimes you find out they're super responsive on one specific platform. So maybe prior to the pandemic or months ago, they were very active on Slack. They could have changed workplaces, and Slack is not the primary tool they're relating with. So you'd be surprised they're not responding to DMs, they're not participating in the chats. And then when you send them an email, boom, they respond to you almost immediately. And then feel free to ask those questions. Do you have a preferred method we should be communicating? Sometimes even that email it's a no pressure email. It's them responding to you, especially if you invite that feedback to say, I may not be able to run this group again. So sometimes it's also the content of the email. Sometimes you're like, oh, we found someone who's willing to support you for this group, or we wanted to know if we should go out to look for a co-organizer. And then those sort of mails get responded to. If it's a mail that's like, you haven't organized an event, when is your next event? If it's something that puts a little bit of pressure on them, asking them, why aren't we seeing you, or why aren't you coming, right? Then maybe people like, okay, this is another thing that could bother me, and I don't want to be part of it, right? So it is a mixture of various channels, like Isotta said, but also what is the message you're sending to them, and how do you even reassure them that this is not about putting pressure on you to take up responsibility. I want to find out how I can help you, and it's okay to say, I don't have the bandwidth to run this anymore. Would you even be in a position to maybe mentor someone or give someone, some tips on how to keep this community alive?
Yeah, I love that. Very, very important to think about what is the message you're trying to send, and then adapting the channel to share that message. So we've alluded to a little bit of that concept of, a lot of groups were left without leaders through the pandemic. So we've mentioned it. So I think it's just a reality. Someone dropped a question specifically around that, right? It's something, it's just life. People over time may no longer be able to continue their commitment to run a group. So what strategies have you been using to find new group leaders to help continue those groups that were left without a leader? And Julia,
yeah.
go next.
So there's two components when I think about this question of how we find new leaders for groups left without leaders. Two components. The first is outreach. And typically we'll send a message to the Meetup group, letting the group know that we've observed that the group hasn't met in a while, and the current or previous leader is no longer available to organize that group. Would anybody like to come forward? And we share an email address that they can reach out to, and they can also send us a message via meetup.com if they're interested. So that's the outreach component. And then there's this piece around onboarding and empowerment, because we want to make it as easy as possible for folks who are interested in serving as organizers to do so well and have the resources and tools that they need to do so well. To that end, we ask new organizers to complete an online asynchronous Meetup organizer training, and I'll share the link to that in the chat as well. And then once they complete that, it's fairly straightforward. It's not a big lift on the part of the new organizer. Once they complete that, we ask them to schedule a brief live over Zoom orientation with a member of the WordPress global community team. And during that orientation, it's a time for discussion, for going over some guidelines around organizing meetups, but also answering any questions that they have and letting them bounce ideas that they might have for their group. Bounce those ideas around and share our own perspective on them. So it adds a human component to that empowerment piece. One other thing is that in terms of the outreach, we at WordPress can send a message to the group as a whole seeking a new organizer. We also sometimes, if the previous organizer is still in the mix, maybe they don't want to continue organizing, but they're happy to stay involved in some way, we'll ask them to send a message to the group or let us know if they have anybody in mind who might be interested in serving as an organizer.
Awesome. Yeah, I think definitely one tactic within that is thinking, the ask could be to become the group leader, but sometimes it's just, can you do a little bit of help that is not fully running the group, but that can also be valuable. So that can be also another tactic to get more people to get involved. So we have about 10 minutes. I have one more question, more focused around, how can the kind of an organization can support leaders, and then we're going to transition the conversation to how can we help, how can group leaders can help reinitiate engagement from their members. And I see we have some questions from that from people as well, so I want to make sure that we get to that. But just kind of quickly, can you, Isotta, just share what are some of the benefits that you see that organizers feel that they get from being a group leader within the WordPress community?
Without any doubt, I'd say all the support and the structure behind, because it's great community, well organized, and based on principles of open source. So that means that everyone can influence and participate into the whole decision process, and everything is discussed publicly, and anyone who wants to join can do it. And then talking about their local communities, they really have a huge impact on the ecosystem of their cities or their town. We hear every day about organizers who tell us that they have changed other people's lives organizing these events, and it's fantastic. So basically, they are really shaping their society.
That's amazing. So the positive impact, really, that's the main benefit that a lot of organizers see. And Aniedi, what about you? Anything else that you feel like organizers feel like the main benefit for them to be a group leader?
Yeah, I think the sense of fulfillment, obviously being a community organizer connects you to opportunity, right? People are generally looking for speakers. Sometimes they're appealing to companies for sponsorship. So they're building this network of relationships. And that is one, I would say. It's not necessarily it just happens organically with leading a community and taking a leadership position. We do have a few incentives within the Google Developer Groups community, not stuff we sort of lead with or project with or promise, but oftentimes they get exclusive invites to events. Recently, we had like a regional summit, and we have a lot of the regional summits happening all over the world, where we were able to gather together almost like 400 of these are community members, bring them together for a 2-day, 3-day event in Sunnyvale community building. It's a bit of training and some fun as well. So a lot of people look forward to things like that, but that's not just the reason why they decide to either lead a community. So in addition to that, I think I do have one thing I wanted to share also, just about reinitiating or bringing your communities together. I think don't try to do it alone, right? Collaboration is really important, and if you have a meetup group or special interest group, you may definitely need to even step out of your own group and go attend other meetups or groups and have an opportunity to talk to people or talk to the organizers. But if possible, you can collaborate, so you can cross-post an event that is with a similar group. So two groups going out together to do one event, or if one group is hosting an event, you could reach out and say, hey, I have people who may be interested in the same thing. We have a similar group on technology or on gardening or catering or whatever it is, and just feel free to post that group's event, like cross-post it on your own platform, and then they may also reciprocate that offer. Other than that, just collaborate, right? 2-3 groups coming together to do one event. I think ultimately it will help each and every group. So things around collaboration and clustering is something that we've seen that has helped, organizers just, get back together again and get their own events and other groups up and running once more.
Yeah, I love that. I've definitely seen that across many communities. For example, organizers of different local groups in the same country, maybe doing a country level online event, depending on what type of activity you host, but that can be interesting, of reaching out to other organizers that are, within the same sphere of activity as you. So on your end, Isotta, from the WordPress community, what are some ways that you've seen group leaders connecting successfully with members to drive more participation?
I think that almost all organizers always invite their community members to really being active in participating into different phases of the event organization. So first, and most of them, when they are reactivating the meetup, or at the end of the year looking towards next year, they ask member what do they want to see next, what do they like they are more passionate about. They ask them for suggestions about themes for the event or type of activities, and they also encourage them to share their story and their knowledge with the rest of the community. And if they're interested, to like become maybe event organizer or assistant organizer, so it's not scary, and become from member to okay, lead organizer. But Meetup.com allows you to use different roles, so someone can like give a help and give a hand once in a while, but still giving a lot of help to the entire group.
I just want to add something
yeah, go ahead.
to Isotta. So also very important for people who are leading groups, ask for help. Oftentimes people who attend your events feel that being a member or being an organizer or a leader is exclusive, or there's some barrier to entry. So if you don't reach out and tell people, hey, if you want to organize or if you want to be part of the group on a temporary basis, on a one-off basis, you may not get the help you need, and people may just feel like, hey, he's out there or she's out there and I can't be part of that. So always feel free to offer that opportunity for other people to contribute to your group.
Absolutely. I was going to kind of, say the same, is making this, it's a community and it's meant to be collaborative. And as a leader, yes, you have an important role, and, you're leading and you're creating a framework or a structure, but ultimately the goal is for everyone to contribute to making this group successful. So by being very explicit about that and encouraging everyone to participate at many levels can really, really go a long way. And just on that, have you, any of you found certain type of events to be more successful to get more members to sign up and show up?
I noticed actually in the Q&A that there was one particular question around this moment that we're in. I'm just looking for the question around, there may be according to this question asker, maybe a new reality where in-person learning events are simply not that attractive anymore because the online resources are just too awesome. This is something I have been thinking about in the context of WordPress meetups. And to that end, I do think that the benefit of the in-person piece these days is the social connection. And it's social connection for folks who have a shared passion. In this case, in the case of what Isotta and I are working on, that shared passion is related to WordPress. But it's a time for folks who are WordPress enthusiasts to get together and be together in person, build meaningful human-to-human relationships. So I do think that a social event, particularly for that kickoff event that brings your group back together, is a social event so valuable.
Absolutely. So really bringing the people together. Aniedi, anything, what about you? Any type of event that you've seen pretty successful within the Google developer groups?
Yeah, I can speak specifically to, our groups are primarily technical. And one thing that has been significant about this period is people have been looking for opportunity. People have been looking for jobs. People have been looking for new skills. So where these sort of events are able to bring something quantifiable, like preparing you for a certification, preparing you for an exam or a test, if you can, find that value proposition and then offer it, that helps lead people closer to their next goal of a career change or a new job or direct interaction with a mentor or an opportunity, then that really sticks for them, especially sometimes when you want to have a series of events. So if you're going to have a series of 5, 6 learning events that lead towards trying to earn a particular certification or skill, then that really lands well with people. In addition, you have to lead with the content and probably sometimes the speaker or the facilitator of the event, right? It's not enough to say we're going to have a Google developer group meetup or we're going to have this event. Try and really be very specific about the value that the specific facilitator or the event or the agenda item, because sometimes it gets buried in there. People think it's the normal regular cadence, but then if you don't specify what exactly that strong value is for people to come to your event, then it's hard. And like Julia said, it's social connection. So if this gives me an opportunity to connect with that person, I've been following their podcast or I follow them on YouTube, and somehow you're bringing them in person to the event and I get an opportunity to talk to them, or if it's a reading club or something, and then this person is going to be there to sign autographs or something, really very, mind blowing, then people actually try to come for those events.
Yeah. And to that point, we're actually very soon releasing a new feature for Meetup Pro customers where we'll have a dedicated space to feature speakers. So to your point, kind of like, making that even more obvious on the event itself to drive more participation. So I'm going to take, I know we're I'm almost about time, and we've kind of covered a lot of questions from the participants through the questions that we had. There's one that came up a couple of times that I'd love to end with is, a lot of people are asking, what are some best practices? So maybe we can end with each of you sharing one or two tips of keeping community members engaged and ensuring that they keep on coming and have a positive experience.
Happy to jump in here. I'll share two hot tips. The first is get your next 3 events on the calendar right now. So before you kick off, before you bring everybody back together for that first reactivation gathering, get not only that event on the calendar, but the 2 that will follow on the calendar. That way you'll build and keep the momentum. My second hot tip is to try out a variety of event formats and perhaps a variety of meeting times and locations. It's great to have multiple co-organizers if possible, because that allows for a greater diversity of events. It's just more people able to organize more events and a greater variety.
Awesome. Isotta.
Yes, I have a couple as well. I would say always try to alternate between or more formal or learning events or working events with just social. Depending on the country, it could be meetup in a pub and drink a beer or a tea or a coffee, but just remember to give the social space to just hang out and strengthen the relationship and just have fun. And also the things that we mentioned before, to have your members participating actively. So ask, instead of preparing something and just share it to them, invite them to sharing ideas, to share their preferences, and also invite them to take an active part on the organizing side.
Amazing. Aniedi, the last tip of the day.
Sure. So one thing I would say is a lot has changed on the landscape, right? For instance, right now, short form content is big, right? So the way you reach out to your members, some people say, oh, we've been sending them newsletters or emails. We're not even sure whether these things are being sent at all, whether it's been sent to active members. You might have to try a new variety of outreach channels to reach your members. Email is not enough anymore, or posting long form content, it's a lot has changed, right? So experimenting with these new forms of trying to get influencers or content creators to get people coming to your event, I think is absolutely very, very important. In addition, just like I think Julia said, making sure you have a predictable cadence of events. I think that's one thing that groups have to try and figure out. So if you meet once a month, or if you meet once a quarter, or if you meet every 2 weeks or every month, let people know what that time is and try and stick to it and don't lose hope. So if you say we're going to be meeting on the last Saturday or last Thursday of every month, you have to do that consistently for 4 or 5 editions or 4 or 5 events before you actually start seeing the numbers. So if only 2 people turn up this time around and only 5 people turn up next time around, don't give up. You just have to do that consistently before you see a very clear impact, right? Once I know that it's the last Saturday of every month, if I'm booked this weekend or this month, or it's the holiday season, sometime in March, I may be able to just like, okay, now I can make it. I know I'm also going to make March and December and January, but definitely February and March is very like, so I don't even need to think twice. I know when this event occurs and I can easily put it on my calendar ahead of time. So I think that would be my top tip for organizers, trying to really define the cadence, frequency, and venue of your events so that if people even miss the notifications or the emails, they can sort of predictably put it on their schedule and just show up. And for those who say they've been reaching out to either organizers or people who are not, responding, don't give up, right? People are dealing with a lot of stuff this time around. Don't bug them, don't spam them, find the right, frequency, but keep on reaching out to them. Eventually, at least 30 to 40% of them will get back to you.
Absolutely. Consistency and patience are key with communities. What great tips and tactics we discussed today. Thank you so much to the three of you. This was such an insightful conversation and appreciate everyone joining us. We got really good questions, and I think this is such an important discussion to have, especially as we are ending this year and starting 2023. So lots of good tips to put in practice and incorporate in the strategy for next year. So a few more links that we wanted to share with you before we let you go. First of all is I want to share about the organizer community that we have on Discord. And so we're about to just share here. We're going to leave the link, the scan here, the scan code. So if you feel like you want to connect with other organizers, we have mentors, successful meetup organizers that have been, organizing for years that are actively in the chat, helping you answer your questions, connecting with you. We also have people from Meetup as well in there. So please join us. And we are also adding some links in the chat from our three guest speakers today. So once again, thank you so much. Best of luck to everyone in your efforts of reactivating your communities. And thank you for bringing people together.
Thank you. Great to see you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Good luck, everybody, with your meetups.